Let's do a just kind of a brief introduction to the the drawing menu where you can draw, color, and blank vectors. So just quickly here, we'll go, if you tap the digit 9, that takes you to the first frame in the set, which we're already there. You go into the menu J, and you tap the digit 9 in J, and you get an empty frame at the beginning of the frame set. So now we have a frame that appears to have nothing in it. And from the main menu, we'll go into menu K. All right. So this is what's actually in an empty frame. There are actually two vertices here. They're both at the origin, 0.000, and the vector that they form is blank. So that's what you start with by default. As you can see, there's this little square thingy that I call the egg, and there's this little thing here that I call the spider. So you move those around using the square brackets. The opening square bracket and curly bracket affects the position of the egg, and the closing square bracket and curly bracket affects the position of the spider. So right now you can see that they are on the 0th vertex in the image. There are two vertices in this image. So let's tap the closing square bracket once, and you can see it just moved that. Now it's on the vertex index 1. And if we press and hold X on the keyboard, it'll move that, because in this menu, most of what goes on is going to happen wherever this spider is in the art. So we just moved it, so now we have basically the simplest thing that you can possibly have in a frame, and that is a single vector. This is the origin or the anchor of the vector. This is the destination end of the vector. And if you hit Shift B, it unblanks the vector, okay? And if we hit the P key, we can go over here and see how it moves this color picker thing, right? So we're going to move this to, there's yellow. In its palette index 16, it's 255 red, 255 green. That makes yellow. And we hit the C, lowercase c, and it colors the vector. So now we have a vector, and we can see it. Now, if we do Shift and then the closing bracket, which actually gives you a closing curly brace, it'll move the spider back to the origin here. We can move the origin too. So I hit Shift X, and I'm moving the origin backwards in X. I can move it up and down in Y. And also, I'll show you here. There's the floating axes. Rotate space a little bit. Go back into menu K. And you can also move it in Z. See how that moves in Z? Okay, so go back to the cardinal view. Tap the closing bracket. Now the spider's back on this end of it. You can also rotate a vector around its anchor point, and that's the F key. As you can see in the menu here, it says rotate vector at spider around. You can rotate it around X or Y or the Z axis, and that's the D key, and the Shift moves it in the opposite direction, the G key or the F key. So F corresponds to Z, and it's currently set to 1 degree of rotation per key hit. So when I tap the key, every time I tap the key, that's 1 degree of rotation. And I can change that right here in rotate degrees per key hit. It's currently set to 1 degree. So I say C. Let's go ahead and make it 45 degrees. Enter, escape, back to here. Now when I tap the F key, see, that's a 45 degree change in the angle. Okay. Back to tab, back to C, back to 1. Okay. All right. And the same holds true of other settings as well. Like, okay, let's rotate this back down. Now we're on the line. Okay, so in the tab key, if we change move points per key hit, it's currently 100. we'll go 0. We'll make it something like 2,000, so it's obviously more. Okay, now when I tap the X, or make it Y so you can see it, see, it just jumped 2,000 points in space. Okay, same applies to X. Okay, and we'll go ahead and set that back to what it was. 0, 100, and wait a minute. No, and also this scale percentage per key hit is currently set to 1%. Okay, that's D. We'll change it to 10%. Okay, so now when I hit M for magnitude, it changes the magnitude no matter what the direction of the vector is, changes the magnitude. Every time I tap the key, the magnitude of this vector changes by a factor of 10%. Okay, so that's kind of how the settings relate to being able to draw. Now, back to what we were doing here. Okay, now the spider is on the very end of all of the vectors that are currently in this set, which is there's only the one. There's the 0th vertex, the first vertex, that makes a single vector. So if I tap the period key, the dot, I get another vector. It just pops off the end of it. Now, actually I'm going to hit the delete, excuse me. If I hit the backspace key, I can delete that. I'm going to make this vector a lot shorter so you can see what's going on here. Go back to tab, D, go back to 1% scaling factor. Okay. And hang on a second, let's go into L, select it, move it up. All right, so now I go to E, okay. All right, so there we have one vector, okay? There it is. Now, when I tap the period, it replicates it replicates this vector and it pops off the end of it, and then it moves the spider to it. So that's how, if I just keep doing that, it'll just keep repeating this same vector until we run into the boundaries of space, in which case it pops over to the other side of space, because it would have been here, which corresponds to over here. So you can just move it back to wherever it is you wanted to by using, move or rotate or magnitude or whatever, however you want to move it, okay? Now, if the spider is somewhere within the lit segments, in other words, it's not on the last one, it's somewhere inside of it, if you hit the period, it splits the next vector in half. So it adds a new vertex halfway to the next one that's already there. So like if you were like fitting around a series of vectors around a curve, for example, and you wanted just a little bit more smoothness in the curve, you could pop an extra point anywhere within the series of vertices, and then you can move it independently. See here, it moves in Y, it moves in X, just like you would expect, and you can even rotate it around its anchor point, just like you would if it was the last vector. Now, here's the tricky part. Okay, blanking and coloring of individual vectors is a little bit tricky. You kind of have to figure out how it works. Now, as you can see, I can move the egg around with the opening square bracket, curly bracket. The square bracket moves you forward through the vertices, and the curly bracket moves you backwards through the vertices. And then the closing bracket, as I said, it moves the spider, okay? Now, in order to select a single vector, both the egg and the spider have to be on the destination end of the vector. So both the egg and the spider have now been placed on the very last vertex in this frame, and they're both on this vector. They have selected this vector. Now you might think, well, that would select the vector because you're selecting you know, the first vertex and the last vertex, but that's not how it works. In ILDA, the color and blanking information is stored in the destination end of the vector. So if we put both the egg and the spider on the destination end of the vector, that selects this vector. So if I hit the lowercase b, that blanks it. If I hit the capital B, that unblanks it. If I pick a different color, like green, for example, there's green. If I hit lowercase c, it colors the vector, okay? Now another thing that lowercase c does, back here, whoops, okay, we'll move this to, okay. Now the spider is now on this vector because it starts at the anchor and ends at the destination. So the spider itself is on this vector. If I type capital C, it sets my color picker to the color of this vector. So if you have a frame that's already got stuff in it and it already has colors, in order to match the colors that are already there, you just move the spider to a vector of the appropriate color, whatever you want. You hit the capital C and it'll pull the color from the vector and find that color in the palette color picker, okay? So again, if we want to change the color of this vector right here, which starts here and ends here, we got to move, whoops, we got to move the spider and the egg both to the destination end of the vector. Pick a different color. We'll go with blue. There's pure blue. See, there's 0 red, 0 green, and all the blue. And we hit lowercase c, and it's blue. Okay. And we go to the next vector, like this, and we can blank it, lowercase b, now it's blank. Okay? So if you go out here, see, now, since blanking is not turned on, see there's vertices, there's indices, you can't see it because it's blank, all right? Unless we turn the blanking on, and then you can see it. There it is. So that's in short, that's how you draw in LaserBoy. Now, also in menu K, if you've got a whole bunch of vectors and you don't want to have to move this thing all, you know, both the egg and the spider all over the place to figure out how to get them on the same location like this. Let's say your egg is all the way here and your spider is all the way over here. You'll notice in menu K you have capital K and capital L. Capital K puts the egg on the spider and capital L puts the spider on the egg. It doesn't change anything about the art, it just changes where those cursors are. So if I wanted to pop the egg to be sitting at the same location as the spider, I just go Shift K. Now they're on the same one, and now I can change the color of just that vector, or I can blank it, or I can unblank it, or I can move it. Okay? And that's kind of how it works. That's in brief, that's how it works. Now, something else I can do, which is kind of cool, is, let's go to first, okay, let's go to J, let's add an empty frame, hit digit 9, let's go back to here, turn off the indices, right, so we can't see those, and go back into, all right, okay, menu K is where we would do our drawing, right? So if I go I to input a file, and I choose 6 for a bitmap file, I choose 8, and I pick the name of a file, and I can scale the file to fit the background of the image. Now I've got an image in the background. Now this, it's not really part of the art in any way, it's just there so that we could trace over it if we want to. Okay, so in menu K, go here, we can leave the spider right where it is on the origin. See, it's on the point, it's on the 0th vertex, right? And we can move it to a place where we might logically want to start tracing this image, like right there. And then we hit the closing parenthesis to move the spider to the destination end of the vector, and we hit Shift Y, and we can bring it down can use the M key, which is the magnitude of the vector, to shrink its length a little bit. Right, so get it there. Move the egg on the same point. Shift B to unblank it, and we'll make it blue, because blue is typically used to represent black in laser display, because obviously there's no such thing as a black laser. Ha! That'd be weird. Okay, so we'll color it. Now it's blue. Okay, so now we go dot, that's a period, and there's another one, all right? And we might want to bump that up just a little. Dot, there's another one. Bump that down a little. Dot, and there's another one. All right, so this is how we would begin to trace. Do another one, and we'll move it down a little bit, like this, and change the magnitude of it, and shrink it up to about there. And we can bring the spider back in here, and we can move points within. Get a little bit better of a fit there. Right? Okay. So we just traced. Okay. Now, the semicolon makes the background bitmap appear and disappear. And if you shift and give you a colon, it shows you the negative image, which sometimes makes it easier to see what you're doing. All right. So there's that. That's what we've drawn so far. Okay. And what's cool about this background bitmap image thing is I can zoom out of space or I can zoom into space, and the bitmap moves with it, which means I can also rotate space. Hang on. Well, that's insane. Yeah. I can rotate space, and the image also rotates with it. This is it takes a while to do this because there's a lot of math involved in what's going on here. So let's go back to the cardinal view. No zoom. Okay. And we can zoom in as well, right? So if we wanted to do that, we could zoom in and we can pan. Pan down. Move the whole frame up, so we can see what's going on with where we're working, get a better idea of how these points fit. Back to the K menu. Let's go there. And this can fit a little bit better, like that. And that one's good. This one can come down a little, like that. This one move over some, and a little bit down, and there, and okay. So, all right. So let's move this one up and over a little. Whoops. There. And another one. Move it into place. Okay. So we have that. Let's go to normal zoom and no offset. Okay, there's our normal view. And see, there's the line segment that we have so far, right? So to continue, then, let's say we want to start this thing again right here, okay, to start tracing this part of a line here. Pop one off, K, capital K, to put it there, B to blank it. So now it's blank. So now I can move this thing up to get it into position. I'm using the X and Y keys, and Shift X and Y to move it around. Pop off another one, Shift K to move the egg to it, Shift B, capital B, unblanks it, so now we can see it again, and we can rotate using the capital F. We're rotating clockwise. Get it there. Shift M, change the magnitude, shrink it down, get it into place right there, and then pop and rotate a little, pop and rotate a little bit, pop and rotate. See, I'm using the dot key, period, to give me a new one, a new vector, and then F rotates it counterclockwise. So get this rotated into place. And just keep going like this. And as you can see, there's the line that we have so far. All right? And you just keep doing that until you get the whole image traced. And when you do, it'll look like this. This was drawn using the technique that I just showed you. Okay? Now, in the K menu, another thing that you can do is the U key. See up here, it says U, capital U, changes the selection. And the selection is this indicated by this thing where it says from the egg to the spider, right? From the egg to the spider is what is selected. And this, when you tap the U key, it bounces around in the order of lit segments. So this whole thing right here is one lit segment, and it's separated from all the other segments by blanking. As you can see, this is blank right here, and then there's a little blanking right there. So this segment is a separate piece of the drawing. So when I tap the U key, it's bouncing around the segments. When you go to color something, you can in fact change the color of a whole series of lit vectors like this. So this is a segment altogether. We're going to go Shift P to change the color in the palette picker, color picker, and we just picked green. So there's 0 red, 255 green, and 0 blue. Tap the C key. Now it's green. Blank it or unblank it. Lowercase b, capital B. That gives you an idea of how things work in the K menu, where you can draw color and blank vectors. And the menu, it pretty much indicates all the things that you can do. There's a lot of stuff that we haven't covered here, but that gives you a pretty quick idea of how drawing actually works in LaserBoy. Okay, so we still have this bitmap loaded into the background of the display. Well, the way you get rid of that seems kind of weird, but this is how you do it. From the main menu, you go to Input, like you're going to open a file, and you choose BMP, because this is where the BMP stuff's happening. And we got 0, clear the display background bitmap. So you hit 0, and now it's gone. See? When you hit the semicolon key, there's nothing. There is no bitmap in the background anymore. So that's how you clear it.